Do you like that sound to welcome you back? I'm just kidding. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lucille News Digest. My name is Sam Berg, or as most of you probably know me better as Lucille News on Instagram. And I want to start this off by thanking you all for listening to the first episode. It performed really well and a lot better than what I expected. So I'm back, and we're doing another episode. There's still a lot of things I want to try and square away for future episodes. I'm thinking of, just doing an intro, having some cool intro music, maybe some visuals along with a face cam. I'd love for you guys to see my face for when I record these, and then eventually moving these podcasts onto other episodes. Right now they are just on YouTube, but I'm looking to do like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of those. But I've just been really busy with school recently, and so I haven't had the time to really get all that worked out, and so I apologize for that. But I hope that, just my beautiful resounding voice on YouTube will be good enough, at least for the time being. And once again, huge thank you to the University of Nevada, Reno for allowing me to use their podcast facilities again. And they they made the mistake of providing me with a soundboard, so if it's random points in the show you just hear, that might just be a summary of the season, or I mean, all of those are pretty. It all kind of goes into how this season has gone for the Giants. So in the first episode, I was really talking about, sort of looking into the offseason. And at the time of me recording that episode, the Giants were still above 500. I think I looked back, they had a 75-71 record by the time I recorded those first couple of episodes. But now they're not. See, they are now 2 games under 500 with 5 games left in the season. They got 2 more against the Padres and then 2 more against the Padres, 3 against the Dodgers, all at home. And they are 5 games back of a wild card spot. So they are very much on the brink of being eliminated. They are not quite out of it. Excuse me. They are not quite out of it, but they are the road for them to get there is incredibly bleak and unlikely for it to happen. There was a whole post put out about it. I think it was Game Day MLB. I got the tag wrong. It's like that. I put it on my story earlier, and that it's not very likely that they're gonna make it, unfortunately. But yeah. So what I'm gonna be talking about today is pretty much what has gone wrong. Sort of where the blame is, at least in my head. Obviously, I'm just one guy with one viewpoint. And so that's why I kind of I want to bring in other people. I've got a bunch of friends living with me. Even one of my roommates is a big Giants fan. I hope to bring him in someday. But for today, it's just going to be pretty much me ranting about what has happened with this team, how they went from, competing with the Dodgers for the NL West lead back in June with, they were, I think, 11 games above 500, something like that. And everything was honky-dory. And then it was right around the All-Star break where everything started going wrong. And it went about as wrong as it could. So, yeah, I'm not sure where to start. I think we'll just start by going over sort of how this season has gone. I kind of briefly went over it just a second ago. But I remember when they first started the season, there was a lot of stuff that happened over the offseason that had the Giants in the spotlight. And most notably for stuff it wasn't that they did, it was what they did not do. Because they were super in the Aaron Judge talks, even though it was not like a realistic thing for that to end up happening. They were, for 6 minutes, thanks John Heyman, they had Aaron Judge, and the world was on fire for those 6 to 7 minutes. And then that ended. And then a couple weeks later, they signed Carlos Correa, or they actually agreed to sign Carlos Correa for 13 years, $350 million. And 6 days later, that ended up falling through. And, once again, it is the elusive big fish bat that they are wanting to bring in. I mean, you can trace it back, at least in recent memory, even before Farhan came in. It seemed like the one that's, Probably the furthest back that's coming to my head is Giancarlo Stanton when he was still with the Marlins, and they actually had a deal in place before Stanton ended up shooting down the deal. But then they were heavily involved with Bryce Harper. They were, um, I think they had some level of interest in Marcus Semien. Um, I think they were players in the Ohtani sweepstakes for a while. Let me see. Were there any other names I can think of? Obviously, last offseason with Judge and Correa, they just haven't been able to bring in that big piece to sort of like build the offense around. And, it happened again where, they were sort of pushed in all their chips into the big fish basket, and they swung and missed. And they ended up having to go with some guys sort of on the edge coming off injuries or like a down season, and those were the guys they went for. Instead of Judge and Correa, they got Haniger and Conforto. And, for good reason. Before this year, they were both good players, both coming off, injury. Well, they've had injury-riddled careers, but specifically in 2022, both of their seasons were limited. And on the pitching side, they don't ever usually go for the big name guy. I think I think they had some connection to like Garrett Cole before he went to the Yankees. That obviously didn't end up going through. But they just don't like signing guys, at least starting pitchers, to long-term deals. The longest deal that Kapler is given, or not Kapler, excuse me, that Zaidi is given outside of Logan Webb, who was already in your organization, and that was just an extension, was to Haniger and Taylor Rogers on 3-year deals. And those, if that's the biggest you've done so far, I can't say you're doing yourself too many favors. And so, they don't like to go for the long-term pitching. They've sort of tried to develop, but the only guy they've really had up until this season was Webb. They had sort of relied on guys like Anthony DeSclafani, Alex Cobb, Alex Wood, and then they bring in Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling. And, that's sort of it's a temporary fix. That is not a cast of guys who are meant to, be the rotation for years and years and years. The only one who's there who is probably intended for that purpose is Logan Webb. And the other guys are just sort of stopgaps, I guess is the way to call them. But that's who you got. That is who they got, and they swung and missed on many of the big name guys. And so you go into the season starting in New York, and, I think sort of the big catalyst, I heard the guys in 95.7 The Game, they recorded this morning, and I was listening to them, and it sort of they brought up a point that really sort of set the tone for what this season could be. Is Casey Schmidt was your best hitter during spring training. He was tearing the cover off the ball. He was showing that he was MLB ready. And, I think he even won the award for like best MVP of spring training, something like that. I don't know what the exact award is, or award, excuse me. But they ended up saying, and also Bryce Johnson was another guy who had a fantastic spring training. Neither Schmidt nor Johnson was on the opening day roster, and instead they made a call to the Royals to get Matt Beatty. And, he sort of walked into the clubhouse, and everyone's like, who's this guy? And why isn't Schmidt or Johnson here? And, that's it sort of rang true. It's like, really? You went for that guy instead of going for your own homegrown guys? It was sort of a point of emphasis, at least as the season has gone on, where the Giants have talked about wanting to get younger and more athletic. Casey Schmidt and Bryce Johnson, two young and athletic guys, and instead you go get a guy who's a 4A player who was cut by several teams, and you bring him in to pinch hit against righties. Like, why aren't we giving the guys we already have a shot? And in favor of Matt Beatty, like I didn't get it. And so that's how the season started. And it was a rough start. I think they were 6-13 to start the year, and then I think where it started clicking was the series in Chicago against the White Sox. They had like 5 homers in a game. I think David VR really, I remember he popped off, and that sort of set them back on track. We got crazy performances from everyone. I remember J.D. Davis was our best hitter for pretty much all the first half. He was looking like he could be the starting third baseman of the All-Star team. Tyro Estrada was great. Jock Peterson was doing his thing. Yastrzemski was doing his thing. And then we started calling up the kids. Casey Schmidt was on fire. Luis Matos came up, was off to a strong start. Patrick Bailey, oh my gosh, if not to say that so many people were that much hating on Joey Bart, but it was such a breath of fresh air seeing Patrick Bailey come in and be what he became, especially on defense. And then he was also swinging it too. And yeah, it was just everything was going right. Logan Webb was pitching out of his mind. So Alex Cobb was pitching out of his mind. We also saw, the emergences of guys on the pitching side of Tristan Beck, of Ryan Walker. These guys were so good. Camilo Doval was the best closer in baseball for a good chunk of this season. Up until June, like I said, this team was competing with the Dodgers to take the division. It was feeling like 2021 again. And then it was right around the All-Star break where, things started to slip. Injuries were catching up with them, and just everyone on offense who is not named Wilmer Flores decided to be in a 3-month slump. And that is just continued up until this point, that they are now 2 games below 500. And, Logan Webb, who just threw a complete game last night, was very vocal saying, this is sucked. I think his exact quote was, "I hate losing." Or no, that's not the exact quote, but he said something to the effect of, "I'm tired of losing. I'm so sick and tired of losing." And there's been several reports from the clubhouse that, guys are trying to call meetings and get people involved to get them hired up, or get them fired up, and getting them to almost care more. Like, is it that much to ask to please let's be focused through 162? It sounds like the vocal leaders have been Yastrzemski, Estrada, and Flores. Those have been, the 3 to call meetings and, get people rallied. And it seems like it just continues to not work. And I don't know if it's, we're already out of it, so I'm just not tuning in. I don't know if it's, I'm not sure, but there's conflicting things going on in the clubhouse where guys just don't seem to care as much as the season has gone on. Like, just because you're losing and, falling out of playoff contention, that doesn't mean you're completely out of it and therefore you should stop caring. And it almost seems like that was happening. And it's just so frustrating when you had a team up until June was a top 5 team arguably in baseball, not just in the National League, in baseball. Everything was going right. The pitching was good. And I'll get into the starting pitching specifically in just a minute. The bullpen was pitching out of their mind. The offense was clicking. Everything on defense was doing really good. Just it was all so good. It was all just right. And then it just wasn't. I don't know if there was just everyone started getting fatigued at the same time. I don't know if there was an overconfidence. They're like, "Oh, look how good we are now." Surely that will stay the same for the next 3-4 months, and it didn't. It just didn't. And it's it seems like there's like whatever's going wrong this year is the same thing that went wrong in 2022, where it seemed like there was just a lack of motivation. There was, everyone was just sort of going about their business, not really caring what the results were. And that really sucks because I think it puts you in the worst position you could be as an organization, in the middle. If you're a competing team, you know what your goals are. You're going to the playoffs. Ideally, you get deep into the playoffs, get yourself into the World Series, and give yourself a position to hoist a trophy at the end of October. That should be the goal of any competing team. And if that's not the case, well, you know what? We're giving all of our young guys a chance. We're going to rebuild. We're going to get ourselves, we're going to deplete the payroll. We're going to give ourselves a young team of our own homegrown guys who can become that core to help us get to the future. Even though we're not there now, we're going to try and put ourselves in a position to get there at some point. And then there's where the Giants are, right around 500, who might sneak into the playoffs, but aren't exactly building for the future either. That's sort of the most frustrating thing, is that they're seeing that they're trying to build a team from the margins and trying to make it work on high upside and disregarding the downside. That it showed in 2021 that it can be done, that they can have success by, just living on the margins and playing on upside and finding the value where other people don't see it. And they've tried to replicate that the past 2 years, and it's been an epic failure. And that is where I get to this point of where does the blame go for this? Is it Kapler? Is it the coaches? Is it Farhan? Is it ownership? Who is it? And I'll start off, my opinion, I don't see this as Gabe Kapler's fault. I have liked Kapler as the Giants manager. I think he's been fine. Obviously, there is a lot of philosophy stuff that has, irked people. I know plenty of people are not fond of his politics, but I just see it as a non-issue personally. But I think Kapler is sort of a puppet to what Farhan Zaidi brings into his clubhouse. Is it Kapler's fault that he's given a roster of guys who are injury prone and platoon guys who are only good against one side? What's the point of throwing out a guy who's going to suck against righties? If those are the guys you're given, you might as well use them in the best way you can. The pitching, with the 2 starters all year, I don't know whose call that was, but I have a feeling it was not Kapler's. I don't think Gabe Kapler was like, what the best solution I think for our struggling guys is to do? Is to let John Brebbia and Ryan Walker pitch the first inning almost every game, except for when Logan Webb and Alex Cobb are on the mound. But when Sean Manaea is going to be doing, 3 to 5 innings tonight, same with Alex Wood, with Ross Stripling, with Tristan Beck, with Keaton Wynn. Whenever those guys are going out, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking John Brebbia is going to be the guy to get this party started, and that is going to put us in the best position. That doesn't seem like something Gabe Kapler has a call on. I think that is more, I guess that in my eyes, I just don't see Gabe Kapler rationally looking at that and being like, really? That's what we're doing? That's how we're going to make this team good, is by having not a full rotation, but 2 starters and the rest in the bullpen. Everyone else run to center field and stay there until we let you know. And that has led to a lot of reports of players not feeling comfortable coming to the ballpark every day. They don't know what their role's going to be. The only two people who know what their role is going to be on a given day is Logan Webb and Alex Cobb. Those are the only two guys who come into the ballpark knowing what their job is going to be. Sean Manaea, he didn't know when he was going to come into the game. Alex Wood, he didn't know when he was coming into the game. And then you go to the offense, Lamont Wade didn't know whether he might know whether he'll start or not, but who knows for how long until Austin Slater has to come in and pinch hit for him. It's just, you can understand the frustration of players not having that stability of knowing when you're going to play. And I think it's just an organizational flaw to not, establish consistent roles for your guys. Ross Stripling and Alex Wood, granted their stats, sort of justified why their roles shifted, but they were very outspoken of like, hey, I don't like what's going on. I'll work to be better, but they never really gave him the chance to improve upon that or, sort of say, hey, I know this is what we're doing, but it's really not the best for me. And so, like, what's going on? And so, for me, I see the blame more going towards the front office and the owners. And it starts with Farhan Zaidi. He's been with the Giants since 2019, and he has had one season above 500. The rest have been a smidge, either right at 500 or right near it. 2019 was the final year of Bruce Bochy, and they just sort of rode it out. They rode out that season with a couple of guys, and, that's just sort of how it went. 2020 was the COVID year. There wasn't much you could do. 2021 was their amazing breakout, and 2022 was them trying to recreate 2021 and not succeeding. And then 2023 was the same thing as 2022, where they tried to recreate 2021 and failed. And I think it's just sort of a stubbornness of philosophy to say, well, it worked in 2021, therefore it can work again. And it's just not working. This is the second year in a row where it has not worked. The team that you're rolling out there is not getting the job done. And I think that's due to the fact of the players don't know when they're going to be playing. They can be as available as they want, but, if they don't sort of prepare themselves beforehand, they can't, psych themselves into that role. They can't prepare the way they have their entire lives. And I can't, obviously I'm not a player. I'm not there. I'm just speculating and talking out of my ass. But I can't imagine that is a formula that is going to consistently get you to the playoffs. And it's all the platooning, all of the bullpen games, the over-reliance on guys on, using all 26 spots. It seems like that's what the real pride of Farhan is that he can build a roster of 26 good players. And while that's good, who are your great players? Who are your all-stars? Like, who are the guys who are going to really elevate this team beyond? I mean, there's a couple who you've stumbled into, Logan Webb and Camilo Doval. Those guys are great, but that's not where the concern was. The real reason the Giants fell off as bad as they did was the offense. And they have had zero success with building a really solid offensive core. They have gone with one-year deals. They've gone with platoons. They've gone with, trying to develop prospects. And I get they finally are able to call them up now. But, they've been trying to get this big fish free agent for so long, and they continue to fail. And instead of them switching up the formula, they go spend on guys who are, overlooked and have the upside of really good players, but then they don't reach it, and we're stuck in the middle. The Giants' payroll was $180 million this year. That is not a cheap team. That might be a common misconception that this is a cheap organization. No, they're not cheap. They're just not smart with how they're spending. Giving $45 million to Mitch Haniger is not paying off. Giving $18 million a year to Michael Conforto was not going to work out. Giving $25 million each to Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling was not a good move. Same with giving 25 to Alex Cobb, giving, I think, 36 to Anthony DeSclafani. That's not spending wisely. That is just, it's almost like you're spending to spend and justifying your upside potential moves. Like you're just playing on upside and just not acknowledging the repercussions of what happens when the upside is not reached. And that is where we found ourselves heading into 2024 with several guys who are coming back who you would rather not have back. And all those guys I just mentioned, not having great years. And they're going to be on the books. Those are the guys who you brought in to make this team better, and they just haven't. And I just wonder, what is the future? Are we just going to keep signing guys like that? Because clearly they haven't developed the prospects in order to fill those gaps. They haven't signed or traded for the big guy. We're just sitting in the middle. It seems like it's a roster full of stopgaps and prospects who were just crossing our fingers and waiting for them to finally reach the upside of what we want. But it also seems like whenever they do have the prospects and giving them opportunities to perform, but then you have those stopgaps in front of them that you have to guarantee roster spots to, and the prospects never get their shot. I'm looking at Elliot Ramos right now, who tore the ball up in the minor leagues, and he has had less than 100 plate appearances in 2 seasons. Why hasn't he had his shot yet? You know why? It's because Mitch Haniger has to play. It's because we have to guarantee at-bats to Mitch Haniger. I mean, it's so frustrating that is pigeonholing that the front office and Farhan and whoever's involved with the signings have just wanted to live on the margins and just hoping that the upside of these guys will be enough to push them back into contention, and it just hasn't happened. It hasn't happened besides 2021, they have been mediocre at best. It all came together in 2021. Fantastic. But now we're using that as a crutch. Now we're saying, well, why would we switch it up? We've shown it worked. That was 2 years ago. And now we're heading into the 3rd year from now. And my biggest fear is that nothing's going to change. No philosophy change will happen. It's going to be the same group of guys. And when I say same group of guys, I mean it's going to be the same group of guys overseeing this team. It's going to be Farhan at the helm. It'll be Greg Johnson and all the other people, all the other owners keeping it all the same. Gabe Kapler is still going to be around. I don't know what coaching changes are going to be coming because frankly, I don't see the coaching as the biggest issue. I see it as a philosophy of how they built this team. And when you're spending big money on platoon guys as a, sort of backup to missing out on platoons, why are we okay with that? It seems like that is what this organization is okay with. They are content with being okay. They're content with being 500. How can the ownership see how this team has performed over the last 2 years and think, they've put themselves in a good spot for the next years to come? I don't know what's shown that. I mean, we've called up prospects. That's cool. But how long will it be until we sign a guy to a 1 or 2 year deal that blocks their opportunities? Like I just don't see how things will be different with this same group that is, controlling this organization. Back-to-back seasons of 500 baseball following your record-setting season. How are you okay with that? How is ownership looking at the product on the field and saying, you know, it worked before, surely it'll work again? As much as I don't want to say it, because I want to believe in this team, I want to believe in the group of guys on the field, 2021 seems like a fluke. All they've wanted is to get a big name guy to support their, offense, because that's what their weak point has been. I mentioned it before. Stanton, Harper, Ohtani, Simeon, Judge, Correa. Free agency isn't working. You want to go get that big name guy? Go trade for him. But then you have the same thing of, oh man, we got to get younger. We got to get more athletic. So we're going to hold on to our prospects. We're not going to make any trades. But when we do make trades, we'll do it for no prospects. We'll go get A.J. Pollock instead because he's free. How is that going to move the needle? I mean, the most impactful bat that Farhan under this regime has brought in was Chris Bryant. And that was a trade, and it worked. Chris Bryant made this team a lot better. And, just why would we not want to do that again? We've shown it's worked when free agency hasn't. So if you're going for that big-name guy, make a trade. Pete Alonso is available. He has 40 homer potential. And that's someone who you can probably get for cheaper because he's going to be a free agent next year. So then do your best to sign him later. That's what the Dodgers did with Mookie Betts. That's what the Mets did with Francisco Lindor. Why not do it? If you're going to sign guys to block your prospects anyway and not give them a proper shot, then why are we still hanging on to them? Are we just hanging on to them just in case that Mitch Haniger gets hurt? Oh, perfect. Now Elliot Ramos can come up and get his shot just until Haniger's healthy, and then we're sending Ramos right back down. I just don't see how this sort of thinking is going to put the Giants in a spot to be better than they have been. I'm fearful that, next year, shortstop is a position where you have a few young guys who can take over the spot. Are they just going to bring back Brandon Crawford instead of letting Marco Luciano play? Instead of letting Casey Schmidt play? You've let Tyro Estrada go. You let Donovan Solano go, who is one of your better hitters. You've shown you're willing to let guys go in order to create opportunities for others. So why I just pray that if this is the route, that they're not going to just sign someone to sign someone. I want to see Marco Luciano get his opportunities. I want to see Luis Matos, Casey Schmidt, Tyler Fitzgerald, Wade Meckler, Elliot Ramos, whoever it may be. Pitching side, same with Keaton Wynn, Tristan Beck, Kyle Harrison, Carson Wisenhunt, Mason Black, Kaiwei Tang, John Michael Bertrand, all of these guys who have just had great seasons and can help your team. So if you're not going to use them to go get like a big name guy in a trade, then don't sign anyone who's going to block them. A Michael Conforto type is the exact reason that Elliot Ramos isn't here, because Conforto was just good enough to where you couldn't cut him in order to call someone up. He was just good enough. And that's just what's so frustrating about this is I fear that they're going to just hold the team back by, trying to create impactful moves, but also not building for the future, like not creating the right opportunities for your own guys. And then you're just stuck. I'm scared for how this offseason is going to go. And it's a weak free agent class. So is it just Ohtani or bust? You know, what reason is there for Ohtani to come here? The reason he's leaving the Angels is because they couldn't win with him. We can't even win. Just period. We're below 500 and there's a chance we could end worse than 2022. I didn't think that was even a possibility. They were so painfully average last year and they have a chance to be worse. Oh my gosh. And so who's next? Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman? Are those guys going to make the team better? Or you sign them and then they block the opportunities of for Bellinger, your outfield is already crowded because you have all your guys who you're guaranteed to deals. So where would Luis Matos play? Where would Elliot Ramos play? Where would Wade Meckler get his shot? And then eventually you're going to have some other prospects coming up. There's Vaughn Brown, Grant McCray. There's just so many guys who you bring in to. It seems like you're just wanting a name, but not considering the repercussions. And same with Chapman. He's just going to block Schmidt and Fitzgerald and then take away time from J.D. Davis, who was one of your better hitters. And so I can't trust what this regime is going to do at this point. I don't trust Farhan. I don't trust the ownership because they've made it very clear that Farhan will be back for at least this year. So it just, the one question that I really have about this team is how do we get better from these past two seasons heading into 2024? How are things going to be different? What is the solution? Because it's not a regime change. Farhan and Kapler are back. They've already said so. Are they going to change their philosophy somehow? Will firing some coaches be the magic to get them right on track? Are they going to do what it takes to bring in a big name guy? There's just so many questions that, as a fan and as someone who has just been psychoanalyzing this regime since I started this page, because Farhan's first offseason was the first offseason of my page, so I've been able to see the sort of moves that Farhan has made, and this is coming from someone where, if you followed me for a while, you know I am a staunch defender of Farhan Zaidi. For years, I have been like, well, he's doing this move because of this reason. And everyone's like, shh. Everyone seems to understand it before I did. And now I feel like the dummy for, I did the same thing. I looked at the upside and disregarded the downside. Just assumed that the upside was going to come and that was going to just be good enough. And it's put them in the position now where they are painfully in the middle. It doesn't seem like they're leaning a certain way. They have the ambitions of both signing a big name free agent and also getting younger and utilizing your prospects. So which one is it? How I don't see how this team's going to get better with who they have, and I'm fearful that they're just going to bring in fill-ins, that they're just going to bring in guys to just take roster spots and just put them in a position that isn't beneficial for, the years to come. And it sucks. It really does suck. And so I'm really hoping that we see something different this offseason, because what we've seen the last 2 years is that 2021 was a perfect concoction of everything going right. And they have tried for 2 years to copy what they did, and it hasn't worked. Not only that, but you're starting to fracture the chemistry within the team, and also your reputation outside of the team. Because what you're showing is that, it's sort of dysfunctional. You don't know what a player's role is going to be on a given day. Where if you go to another team, say the Dodgers or the Braves, they'll tell you what your role's going to be, and it's not going to change. For everyone else, you don't know for some guys, you don't even know what position you're going to be in. I'm looking at, Luis Matos, who seems to be bouncing around left, center, right field every other day. He should be every day in center field if that is what you're trying to set up for the future. You want to get more young and athletic? Let Luis Matos play center field. You want to get more athletic at short? You better let Marco Luciano ride at short for these next 5 games and almost all of the 162 in 2024. And I'm just sick of, pretending that what they did in 2021 was sustainable, because that's what they're telling themselves. And it's just frustrating now that we're in a position that it is just the same. We've regressed back down to 500, even below at this point. After tonight, hopefully they eliminate the Padres. I don't know if they got eliminated last night or not, but I don't know I don't know what the plan is. I don't know if it's going to be the same. I'm not excited for 2024. I'll say that outright. If it's going to be the same philosophy of we're going to sign guys to 2 years and an opt-out instead of letting our young guys play, because you're having your cake and eating it too. And it's I apologize. I needed an excuse to use the soundboard one more time. But yeah, it's just frustrating. We'll have to wait and see what the offseason brings, what the sort of plan is, and once the season ends, we're going to hear from Farhan to see, how are we attacking the offseason? Are we jumping full bore at Shohei Ohtani, Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman, whoever it may be? Are we going to be willing to trade some of our young guys? Are we going to let the young guys run wild and maybe have an uneventful offseason? Or are we going to do what we did the last 2 off seasons and sign 1 to 3 year deals to try and make 2024 look good? Because that's what they did in the last 2 years. They tried to make it look good, and then it just simply wasn't good. And so until I see some form of change, I'm not really looking forward to the offseason and just what 2024 will bring. Obviously, I'm still going to support the team, but the frustrations need to be voiced, and accountability needs to be had. This team has not been productive, at least winning-wise, apart from 2021, where everyone had their miracle year. And so until then, we'll have to wait and see. And that will be where I wrap it up. I know it's been about 45 minutes since I started recording. So if you made it this far, thank you so much. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. If you liked this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment saying what you agree or disagree with. Also, feel free to message me on Instagram at Lucille News. I'm happy to have a conversation, unless you're being silly, in which case I'll ignore you. I'm kidding. Ooh, I get to use this again. Oh yeah, Mr. Funny over here. So once again, I'm looking to make upgrades to the show. I'm hoping to have a face cam at some point. I'm hoping to have an intro. If not, I'll just go back to using, the very angelic harp every time. Maybe that'll be the iconic, the sound bit to open up every show. But if you made it this far, once again, thank you all so much. My name is Sam Berg, signing off. Until next time, hope you all enjoyed. Have a very nice rest of your day.